Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to the Planet FPL Fan View, where I regularly invite one of my correspondents onto the podcast to discuss current matters at their club. But it's a new correspondent today. Let me introduce you to our new and first Sunderland correspondent. It's Spencer Barrowman. How are you, Spencer?
Yeah, all good. Thanks for having me on, James. Really looking forward to this conversation.
But looking forward to having you here, mate. I remember receiving you openly said on socials, send me the information for correspondent week. And I sent you a DM and I said, well, come on then, why should it be you? And I got an essay. I got to say, I got an essay. And we could definitely have an essay discussing some of Sunderland's history over the 21st century. But firstly, tell everyone who you are, mate, and why Sunderland?
Okay, so obviously some of you will probably know me as FPL Beery, but I'm a Sunderland fan for my sins. I was born in born in Bristol and born in Sunderland and moved down to Bristol, grown up in Bristol. But my parents they lived up in Sunderland for a bit before I was born, and they my dad was like, "Oh well, you really need to get a football team." Never really got into football that much. Used to go and watch maybe one game off on and off, like up down in Bristol, like Bristol Rovers or Bristol City or anything like that. And then went to Sunderland. And they said he always says to me, it was one of the worst games ever. It's tipping down with the rain, but he fell in love straight away. And we were speaking just before this, James, and it's a religion. And I think when you're born into something like Sunderland, or even with both Northeast clubs, obviously you've got Middlesbrough as well, but more so Newcastle and Sunderland, you kind of that's it. You can't change teams. You've grown up with it. I've got friends at Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs as well. But yeah, I always used to get why are you Sunderland? I was like, well, you kind of that's what it is. It's a way of life really, supporting Sunderland, especially when I used to go to the games with my dad like when I was younger. Yeah, and kind of although I know we'll get onto it now, the last however many years, it's still you love it, and there's still the hope. I think that's what I love about supporting Sunderland, especially. It's just you never know what's going to happen, and yeah, it's brilliant. I would never change it.
Well, some would say they do know what was going to happen or would have known for the last number of years because there's been some sad times. I mean, it's openly fair to
Yeah,
say, and that's part of the story. Where does your story with Sunderland start? Are we sort of this is after Roker Park, I'm guessing.
yeah. So it's around I would have been 2005, so I was about 5 years old, 5 6 years old. I think my first game was Stoke away. I think it was 2-0, I think. But obviously growing up and kind of especially in Bristol, home games is a bit of a tough one to get to everyone, but try and do as many away games as possible, especially when I was younger as well. And yeah, I mean, especially living in Bristol with Midlands teams and kind of most London teams, and obviously a bit of Cardiff and Swansea as well. Sometimes you could get to those games quite easily, and just what people will realise, especially now that we're back in the Premier League, is how kind of loud and proud we are as Sunderland fans, especially in the away end. It will just be, I think some people would have seen it in the playoffs as well. Like the limbs are brilliant, and just it's a real good atmosphere as well, especially in the away games.
Well,
But yeah,
I guess there'll be a little bit of comparison. I don't want to bring the enemy into it too much, but
yeah,
obviously for Newcastle fans, they too had a long period of not being happy with certainly the way their football club was being run. And I think we saw that energy with Newcastle wants to take over first side, something that they felt like they could believe in. And
yeah,
it will be similar for you now as well, that excitement. Because what a lot of people will remember when you were last up in the Premier League is empty pink seats, mate.
yeah. Well, they've been replaced now, luckily.
I know
Those
they
pink
have.
seats.
But also those
Yeah,
who've watched you recently will, I mean, the limbs on Ballard's equalising goal against Coventry is some of the arguably the best limbs of last season. It's just as a
mm,
phenomenal setting. And I think that's nice to see because I've been at the stadium light and it's not been full
yeah.
when the support hasn't been fully behind the team and stuff. And I'm looking forward to going back. Do you think it will be a sellout every week next season?
I really hope so. I know that season tickets have gone up obviously astronomically. Even if we hadn't have gone up this season, I think there would have been a real buzz around what we could achieve this year if we hadn't been promoted. I know it's kind of it's mad to think really now. Kind of just speaking in about Ballard's goal, it's like you get goosebumps just thinking about Tommy Watson obviously finding the back of the net, 95th minute. I'm just thinking, yeah, I think we're just sort of riding on the crest of a wave now where the club's done so much with sort of that PR where fans are really back into it. And I know next season isn't going to be the easiest, but I think that's a bit of an understatement to be fair. But I think it's going to be rocking every week, especially when it comes to those derby days or when we're playing against the big boys like Liverpool and Man City. It's been a while since we played against them, so yeah, really, I think everyone is really looking forward to it, especially those like first couple of home games, seeing how we get on.
Yeah, I said that to someone the other day. I said, don't want them away in like the first two or three. Just
Mm,
let them settle down first, and
yeah,
then
I,
happy to go there and play them.
it, I've my prediction is home against Man United, first game of the season on the Friday night, or Everton away, and I think that's more to do with obviously young Bradley Dowry that passed away, and the sort of connection that the two clubs had. And obviously, now he's passed away, and obviously there's still that sort of memory of like the both clubs kind of working together with that. So I think that may come into it, but that's just sort of like a hope. And obviously with a new
But
stadium as well. But
yeah, the only thing they've asked to play games away, haven't they? I think at the
yeah,
start of the season, we might find out more
and
about that next week.
yeah, and our only problem is with the Rugby World Cup, the Women's World Cup. I'm not sure if that comes into effect on when our games can be played at home because they're using Stadium Light.
Oh, okay, and when's that?
So, I think it's September. I think,
Oh, so
but
you might even have a spell of away games over that period. That's quite
and
interesting.
yeah, it's definitely worth a look. And obviously, yeah, when things get finalised and the fixtures come out, we may see that we have two or
A
three
fixture
aways
or
in a
two
row.
switched or something. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
because
quite interesting.
I think Brighton will be in the same position if it happens, because I know that they're using the what is it, the Amex
Yamex, yeah.
for games as well, which they
So
used as well for the
when you
men's.
first went to Sunderland, who was manager?
Oh, I think it would have been Roy Keane. I think.
So you came up with Roy Keane. He obviously took over, had a really
Yeah,
dodgy start in the championship. He had this brilliant season,
yeah,
and then came up, stayed up. There was a falling out. He
yeah,
went, but the club obviously sustained and stayed in the Premier League from that point onwards for
yeah.
a really long time. But it did feel like there was a number of years where you were having this great escape
Mm,
towards the
yeah,
end of the season. Memories of the Canio sliding at St
yeah.
James's Park probably live long in the memory.
Yeah.
Him, Gus Poyet, Dick Advocat, it was a succession of
Uh,
managers who kept
yeah,
coming in and keeping you up. And then the next season would start like shit again and they were gone, right?
yeah. That pretty much sums it up. I mean, I I just remember. I think that sort of managerial merry-go-round. I think it might have been Martin O'Neill when I turned around to my dad. I said it was just when like Twitter was kind of becoming a lot more. You could get the news early on there. And that's when I said O'Neill's been sacked. And he goes, "Oh, any idea they're saying we're going to get?" And I was like, "Paolo Di Canio." And he goes, "What?" He's like, why the like obviously he'd only been at Swindon and he'd done okay. I think he had a promotion or two maybe, and he had some good players with him, and obviously like players like Wes Foderingham was in goal, and I know he fell out with him. That's a bit of like
League
a
One Wes, yeah.
yeah League One Wes, but it was just characters like him that we'd just bring in, and I was we, like we've said, it was a merry-go-round of sort of we're going to get relegated. Oh no, we stayed up with 5 games left to play. We've won all five, beating teams like Man City or Chelsea. I mean, one of the best results obviously was when we beat Chelsea away. It was the first time Mourinho had lost in however many years, and it was Barini scoring the penalty, which was a bit of a dodgy decision given by Mike Dean, which was a great one as well. But yeah, it just yeah we
Was that
the
under
annoying
Poyet?
thing.
It was under Poyet, wasn't it? That
Yeah, it was.
yeah.
Yeah, and there was the banner which was like miracles do happen because I remember he was like I think it was 2 months with season left to go, and he's like, yeah, we need a miracle.
I recall Connor Wickham went on a mad spell scoring goals.
Yes,
You'd had
yeah,
some really difficult games. You'd won at Chelsea. I think you nearly won at City, if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
Drew,
You conceded
Drew
the late
Tubal.
goal, and
Was it Sameh
you won
Nasri?
at Old Trafford, and Sebastian Larsson scored late in the season as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, you had
yeah,
these remarkable results to help get you out of trouble. I recall that. One man who
Yeah,
also kept you up was Big Sam,
yeah,
who then went on to get the England job.
yeah,
That lasted not as long as many of the Sunderland vacancy jobs last. David Moyes came in. You must
yeah.
have had hope at that point, no?
I had hoped for about a month until we kind of came out after like first game of the season was like, yeah, we're gonna get relegated. Words to those effect, and you're like, right, okay, you've still got time to save this. Don't just write us off now. But it was just really, and I know a lot of people love David Moyes, and I loved him before he was at Sunderland, and I can kind of accept him now as a sort of a decent coach. But it was like he kind of knew that like he was never going to turn it around, and he was so depressing. And I think, like you're saying, when we got relegated and it was the pink seats and sort of the seagulls flying around, getting the plastic carrier bags and all that sort of crap. I mean, we were like basically resigned to defeat straight away as soon as the season started. And you think if we wouldn't have been in that position maybe if we didn't have bloody Roy Hodgson losing to Iceland in the Euros in the summer, and then we end up losing Big Sam after and he has one game and then gets sacked anyway.
Why was he so down about the chances? Was it a case it was already known that the club was in a financial position that it couldn't really get itself out of in
Yeah,
terms of it had
yeah,
spent more than
yeah,
it speculated? I think it's fair to say probably would be the best word to use. And it was already an issue where you were having to sell players, right?
yeah. We had a lot of sort of well, we had Ellis Short as our chairman, and there was a lot of money we owed to people that we couldn't repay, and he was still funding the club, but there was no real. I think that was the first year when we were buying players like Stephen Pienaar in the summer, and you're thinking it's not gonna be enough to stay up, and yeah, I think that was kind of the writing was on the wall. I wonder how different it would have been under Sam Allardyce. I know he's got good connections, hasn't he, within football agents. Maybe he could have got a couple others in, and we did have some very good players when he was there as well. I mean, like Jan and Vila, players like that were just unbelievable. Um, but it never looked like we were going to sign anyone that would have saved us. And I think Moyes just knew the club was going down. Obviously, that summer as well, going from Prem to Championship, obviously selling Pickford to Everton for 30 million, and even then, that probably covered some debts, but
Makes you
not
wonder in
enough.
hindsight why Moyes took it. It was a terrible time really to take the job. I know someone's got to.
Yeah,
But for him and the experience he'd had at Manchester United to then walk into
yeah,
that probably
yeah.
wasn't ideal.
I don't know who he would have spoken to. I like if he's gone and spoke to Ellis Short, he must have known this is what state of the club's in, and or spoke to anyone in the club, and you would have known straight away. Like everyone knows we were struggling year in year out, so it was
Those
just a
those who don't know Sunderland as well as you do might know the name Ellis
yeah.
Short from the Sunderland Till I Die documentary.
Mm,
Not that he features in it much, but his name comes up
yeah,
quite a lot. Do you want to just explain the kind of the ownership path that the club's been on since Ellis Short essentially stopped funding the football club?
yeah. So he sold to a partnership called Madrox. So they were headed by Charlie Methven and Stuart Donald, alongside Juan Sartori, who is still at the club, kind of. But there was like unaffordable sort of commitments that were made um, on these sort of contracts that Ellis Short had kind of done for the last 10, 15 years, or however long he'd kind of been there. And Stuart Donald kind of and Charlie Methven used the funds from the club to buy the club. So we had like no money; it was all written off. So all these parachute payments that you think, oh well, you just bounce back up. There was nothing there. We had nothing. Um, and I think they like, especially in the early days, and if people watch the Netflix documentary, they'll see how kind of inept they were to kind of in dealing with a big club. They've both been I think Stuart Donald was at Eastleigh, and then going from Eastleigh to Sunderland is a bit of a jump. And I think you could say their hearts were in the right place, but they weren't sort of ready for that sort of big jump. There's a I know, obviously, again, saying about the Netflix documentary, but there's a brilliant bit in it where it's Will Grigg signing
It's
on
exactly what I was going to
deadline
say
day,
about the Will Grigg final day is
and
remarkable what they end
yeah,
up doing.
I know it's just stuff like that where I don't know if you want to explain it because it's probably more fresh in the memory of you, but
Um, well, it's final day of the January window. You'd had I can't remember which point it this who was the boy that was on loan from Bournemouth? Lewis Graben had
yeah,
gone back. He was like, I'm not staying.
no,
I'm going back to Bournemouth. He went on
yeah,
loan to Villa, ironically scored later on against Sunderland later in the season. But he obviously
yeah,
desperately needed a forward. And the club was
yeah.
obviously desperate to get back to the Premier League, obviously. Or was this even stay up? It must have been
This
stay
is
up, wasn't it?
this no, this was this would have been League One, Will
Oh,
Grigg,
to
wouldn't it?
get up back
So
from League One to the
yeah, so
Championship. Yeah.
Lewis Graben did the season before. Lewis Graben was like, yeah, piss off, I'm not playing for you, like, you're absolute basket case. It was
Oh, the young boy up front, Josh
Josh,
Madger.
Josh
Josh
Madger,
Madger
yeah,
went to
yeah,
Bordeaux,
so
yeah.
yeah, because yeah,
And you
I
were
mean that,
desperate for a forward, and there
yeah,
was bids going in for. They'd identified they wanted Will Grigg, and I think Jack Ross was the manager at the time.
yeah,
And Dennis phones him up and says, "Look, we were going to try and get you Will Grigg. What do you think? How far should we push?" And Ross even says to him, "Like, don't go like much further than
yeah,
like 1.2 million or something." I think they said. Ross says like he's a good forward. It's not worth paying more for him.
mm,
So anyway, it gets desperate. It gets to like 1.5. We're done with the sell. It gets to 2 million. We're done with the sell. But a final bid went in like half hour before deadline was like 4 million. You end
yeah,
up paying for him. It's literally staggering that a football club would end up paying. They told Wigan flat 1.5. We're paying no more, and yet
yeah,
by the end of the day, ended up paying. Well,
four
what is
million,
that? Essentially three times that by the end of the day.
yeah,
It's unbelievable
and
in League One.
yeah, and I think that's another thing to point out as well. A lot of people probably would think, oh, 4 million is nothing. It's like when you've got
When
no
you've got no
money
money.
and you're losing money each month and you're spending 4 million on a striker who I don't want to guess how many goals he scored, probably like three. I think he scored 3 goals. He was the record transfer fee until Birmingham decided to spend 10 million on
Is that
Stansfield.
right? Was that still the League One record until
Yeah.
Jay Stansfield?
So yeah, they broke the curse. Obviously he's done all right for them, to be
He
fair.
has.
Um and it'll be one to keep an eye out next season, especially see how Birmingham get on. But yeah, that kind of summed up how they ran the football club. And yeah, just another. And you mentioned Josh Madger there, but losing players like him, we had. I don't know if you know Sam Greenwood. He was at Leeds for a bit, and then was at Borough last season. But he was not like losing academy players like it was nothing. And now that we're kind of in a better place, you're seeing those academy players come through and seeing what they do for the club and where they're going on to. It's crazy that we're in that position to start with, and how it got to that much of a mess. It's purely financial reasons and kind of just
So
bad
these
management.
guys obviously aren't in charge of the football club
So
anymore.
they've sold up, and we've now got a guy called Kirill Dreyfus. So I think he's like 27, 26, but
He's a baby.
yeah, yeah,
In
it's
football ownership terms, he is anyway.
yeah, he's like best mates with like Ousmane Dembele. Like he came and watched a couple of games last season, and that's sort of like shows like his age. Obviously, you've got like people that like thinking, how is he? He's like one of like the chairman's son. No, he is the guy. Um, but his family are kind of wealthy, kind of business people that they were part of Marseille. They own Marseille, and he's got good links with them. And supposedly Juan Sartori, who came in alongside Donald and Methven, was kind of mates with Dreyfus, and he thought he could get him in at some point, but he didn't know when. And obviously, then it kind of all fell into place. We got Dreyfus, we got Christian Speakman, who's a director of football. He came in, so he's been for 2, 3 years now. Um, so Christian Speakman came in from Birmingham, I think. And ever since then, it's kind of you've seen like a massive change in how people perceive like the running of the club. I know we had last season with Newcastle when everything was painted black and white in the sort of the home end. Um, I don't know if you've seen that.
I think everyone's seen it, mate.
Yeah. Other than that, they've been pretty good.
Why? Who signed off on that? So if you
I
don't know,
don't know.
the Sunderland and Newcastle played each other in the FA Cup. Was it third round last year?
Yeah.
It was the first time you'd have played each other, I guess, for 8 odd years. Bar weirdly, you playing Newcastle's under 21s in the Pizza Cup. Let's say the red carpet was essentially, or the black carpet, I should say, was put out for Newcastle's fans in the away end, where a lot of the signage in within the Stadium of Light was changed to be accommodating for Newcastle fans.
Yeah.
Beyond
I
a
mean,
welcome, it's
it
like
was,
home.
yeah, it was that was awful. And kind of, I think they've realized now I think the person who had done it, I think they ended up getting sacked, that whoever made the head of whatever. But obviously, yeah, that was, and then I guess just jumping back. So we're in League One still at this point when Louis Dreyfus comes in and Christian Speakman comes in, and they appoint Alex Neil, who was formerly Norwich and a few other teams as well. But he came in and he was very different to any sort of manager we've had before, where he's kind of like just a bit like just kind of grunts and says what he thinks. Doesn't really. He's just a bit of like an odd character. But I think we went unbeaten from like mid-February, and then got top six on the last day of the season. So went into the semi-finals of playoffs against Sheffield Wednesday. Um, Beat them 1-0 at home. Ross Stewart scored. Obviously, a few fans would have seen the last day of the season he
Yeah, it might have
scored.
been 4.5 from Southampton and a few
Yeah.
FPL benches last year.
But yeah, what a player. And then 1-1 with that was Patrick Roberts scoring the last minute winner. That's another good bit of Linz, if anyone wants to check that out. Um, and then played against Wickham in the final in the playoffs. And I was at that game. And I just remember just the comparison in terms of fan bases. I was like, we've got like this is how many times have I been to Wembley since like I think that's probably the fourth time while in League One, maybe third, maybe the fourth time for
You'd
Sunderland, but
had you'd
third
had
time as a fan.
the playoff finals, Charlton. You
Yeah,
had the
Papa
Pizza Cup
John's club.
final with Portsmouth.
Yeah, lost that one.
Yeah, but the club had a bit of a
Tranmere.
curse at Wembley. Where it hadn't won
Yeah,
since it won the FA Cup in 1973. And I know from the
yeah,
documentary, there was plenty of Sunderland fans. I think there's 8 visits in total. Had been to
yeah,
all 8 and lost all 8 games.
yeah. Like
And
Charlton
I
and
get
teams
what you're
like that.
saying.
Yeah,
Going into the Wickham game, you're obviously a far superior club in terms of size
but there's still that thing.
to
Yeah,
Wickham Wanderers. But even when I'm watching it back, and I obviously know that you're going to win the game, but you're thinking, yeah, the way Wickham play and stuff, you could imagine the nerves would have been because they were such a
yeah,
direct team. The way they played,
yeah,
you could imagine the nerves that would have
yeah.
been around your club.
And it's funny. It kind of I watched back the highlights maybe a couple of weeks ago, just going through little bits, and it's funny how I think Sam Vokes gets in the end of a little like flick on from one of their wingers, and Patterson makes unbelievable save with his legs, and you're just thinking, how has he managed that? And you're thinking, a couple of years later, he's doing the same thing in the playoff final in the championship and making unbelievable saves. And you're thinking that like it just Sunderland goalkeepers at Wembley, something to do with 1973, maybe, I don't know, just one of those.
How much of a relief was it to get out of League One? Because a
Yeah,
little bit, if I can use a different comparison, but I think Leeds is a good one. Like
yeah,
you shouldn't, the two clubs should never have been at that
no,
level. Sheffield Wednesday's another one's been down at that level. You played them in that playoff semi-final.
yeah,
Once it went beyond, like the vibe I got from the Netflix doc was it was well, we've had back-to-back relegations. At least we'll win some games this year. Until the fact that you didn't get promoted is like this isn't fun now.
yeah.
And for
It's
you to spend 4 years at that level, how big was the desperation to get out of that? Does that almost even feel bigger than what you've just achieved in the last couple of weeks
Yeah,
in
I
terms of
think
its importance for the football
yeah,
club?
I think so. I don't think we could have done. I don't know. I wouldn't want to think where we would be now if we were still in League One. I know that was obviously a couple of years ago now, but yeah, it was just it became a shambles, and it's like I was looking through some now. So I've got like this is the same season we got promoted, losing to Charlton, losing to Rotherham 5-1, losing to Lincoln 3-1, losing 6-0 to Bolton away. and like
Yeah, but
6
was
nil.
it Gary Johnson got sacked after that,
Yeah,
right? So he
Lee
changed
Johnson.
managers during
Yeah.
this season.
So Lee Johnson got sacked after that 6-0 versus Bolton, and
Lee
I just got
Johnson, sorry.
yeah, and in the notes I've just got I was in Exeter with my mates, and we were playing a soccer Saturday drinking game. Every time Sunderland conceded, I had to down a pint, so you can tell what sort of state I was in. Um, but yeah, just so many bad ones, and like Accrington Stanley away,
Who are
things like
they?
that. I know, and just I think there's 50,000 people kind of like doing a sigh of relief at the same time when that full time whistle went, because it was never us really. Like we that's like a bit of like a saying like, oh, it's never us. We never get the nice things. So having that sort of, we could have pissed the league after one season in League One, but the way it happened, it was just like, I'm just glad we're out of that, because I wouldn't wish it on any, like, I know it sounds really kind of as if I'm like support like a team that deserves to be at a higher level, but when you're going to teams and you're losing like 6-0 to Bolton away, another team that obviously have been through some awful times, but yeah, I think that, like, I think you're right in saying that that is probably
Did it
bigger.
also, because that season obviously was the first after COVID with fans back in the ground,
Yeah, yeah,
did that also matter more? I totally get your sense of what you said earlier, and I feel it as well when you talk about the enemy in black and white. Like football in that region of the country, it
yeah,
really is like a religion
yeah,
to the two football clubs.
yeah,
And for the people of Sunderland, who I think it's fair to say it's not the most wealthiest area of the
mm,
UK,
yeah,
people
yeah,
were, and I think up in Newcastle, a lot of people are intrinsically affected by how well their football team is doing. And we spoke
yeah.
about even Newcastle had
It
a
means
long
everything.
period of being unhappy with the way their football club was run. So to go through COVID and then find some good times, how big was
Yeah,
that?
yeah. I think that's massive, and I think coming out of that, I mean, I was at the last game before COVID kind of happened. Bristol Rovers away, obviously. Bristol Rovers away. If anyone's been, it's an absolute dive. There's no cover. It's pissing down with rain. We lost 3-0. And I
Our
was
patron
thinking,
Dan says hello, by the way.
yeah, cheers, mate. So yeah, that, and I think you look at that, and we had Phil Parkinson as manager. You're thinking, where are we going to go from here? And I think that sort of that era of like COVID, it's easy to forget now, but that was really tough, and especially when you think about how many fans that it's their life. That it is everything is Sunderland. You get the stupid people that don't wear anything black or white or anything like that. It's just like, yeah, I think getting back into the championship, like you said, it's just massive. It was massive anyway, because obviously we're not in the championship anymore. But um, yeah, I think it was kind of a statement of intent as well. And it's kind of where the club's being run properly now, and we're not going to be a sleeping giant for much longer.
No, and then obviously you came up straight into the playoffs in the
Yeah,
championship in
yeah,
your first season back,
yeah.
didn't make it up, and
No,
then it started going wrong again. And then do you think, oh no, like it's happening all over
um,
again?
I think. Well, obviously, so Alex Neil decides after getting us promoted that he's going to leave for more money to go to Stoke, and obviously that's worked out really well. Uh, I think he's now at Millwall, but I think he's had a few clubs in between, and one of them a bit of a mercenary, which is fair enough. You don't need to have allegiances in as a manager, do you? You don't need to be kind of loyal to any clubs, but yeah, that was a bit of a, he came across as a bit of a knobhead. But um, Tony Mowbray comes in, and we had like Ahmad Diallo, Patrick Roberts, Jack Clark, who was maybe not the Jack Clark that was the season after, but still a top player. Alex Pritchard, Ellis Sims, players like decent championship team. And you hear about the teams like Wolves. I think there was it did Bournemouth go back to back as well? And you think this could be our year, especially when you get to the playoffs.
No,
Um,
obviously Ipswich have done it recently. I think
Ipswich,
Southampton
yeah,
did it sort of in the two
yeah.
thousands, I think.
I don't know why I'm thinking
No,
Bournemouth.
2010s actually, sort of 2015 or so. I think Southampton did back to backs.
Yeah, when they had like the likes like Klein and Luke Shaw
Bournemouth
as
might have
well.
done back to backs the first time, but I don't think so. No, no.
No, but yeah, that, and obviously played against Luton semi-finals, and we had loads of injuries, and the squad was paper thin. And I think the club kind of knew that we were never going to get promoted. Yeah, I
But
think,
also similar to Wickham, be a much bigger football club than Luton.
yeah, Yeah, that's understandable. And obviously, our first season in League One, it was us and Luton who were at the top for ages, and we tailed off, like drawing 0-0 or 1-1 every game, and they carried on winning. And you think now we're back together, but you could tell. You look at their squad, even that season when they were in the Premier League. I know they didn't do great, but they had some quality players. Um, and I think we just ran out of steam at that point. We had a few, like I said, we had a few injuries, but I think just sneaking into playoffs is like give us a bit more hope than. And I think that's probably why you're seeing us now in the Premier League, is because we kind of I think we proved to people that we are capable of doing it, even with a weak squad. Um, I think I've got a note here saying about obviously we went 1-0 up um, with Amad Diallo, and I think it was ended up 2-1, taking a 2-1 lead to Luton. And I just remember they walked out, and it was like the Monstars versus, I believe, Bugs Bunny. Where it's like we've got all the small blokes, and we had Patrick Roberts starting at right back, Luke O'Nine, who obviously, if you know him, is not the biggest, but he
He's
plays
not short
artist.
of it. He's not short of a word though, is he? He's some
No,
personalities, Luke.
and Trey Hume, who is a right back. So we had average height of about 5'8" playing against Luton, and yeah, obviously they've got some big boys, so that was always going to end one way. Um, and I guess obviously losing Ahmad in that summer as well, you're thinking, where are we going from here? He was never going to come back after the season he had at Sunderland, and I mean, I've always every now and then I just tweet and just say, like, how good was Ahmad? Just like what a player, and like whenever he's like one of them is like literally couldn't be further away from like being like born in Sunderland. Like obviously grew up in like Ivory Coast and then moved to Italy, but it just feels like an honorary Mackham, a bit more
Some
like one of
players
them.
just get it.
Yeah, yeah,
Feels
yeah.
right, yeah.
Just one of them. But yeah, we lost him. Stewart went as well to Southampton for about 10 million, and the only real signing we made was Joe Bellingham that summer. Um, Mowbray was sacked about halfway through this second season, and then there was a bit of uproar with Mowbray going because he's like a bit of a lovable uncle. Um, Obviously, I don't know if you've seen like him with his chocolate and his revels. He loves them. So it
Yes.
used to be every now and then you wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
hear him speak because he just have a mouthful of revels, and he'd be like trying to work out who's injured or not, and he's like going through. He's like, "Oh, yeah, I got a caramel one now," something like that. But yeah, he got sacked, and we brought in Michael Bill.
That
Um,
went well.
yeah, I mean, probably the only thing I could say that the club, and since Speakman and Kirill Dreyfus come in, that is probably like the worst decision they've made, and it was just a disaster. Obviously, he was in charge of the Newcastle game. Um, he had to just. It felt like it was always going to happen. Like the writing was on the wall, and it got to a point where I think I don't think they wanted to, but they just sacked him, and we ended up playing out the season with Mike Dodds in charge, who's kind of like caretaker. He was first team coach, but it was annoying to see that happen, especially after the season we just had, and you're like back, like you said, back to square one. Is it going to happen all over again? Um, but we still had like, and I think this is the good thing about, I would call it the model, is very similar to a Brighton or a Brentford, where it's young kids in that have kind of they have a bit of talent, and they might be able to do something if you just give them a couple of games and see how they get on. And we kind of saw Jack Clark how good he was, and he was carrying the team some weeks, and obviously him leaving in that summer was, in hindsight, it helped the team, but we were going into that summer knowing we were going to lose one of our best players, and kind of you're thinking mid-table. I think we finished like 16th. I think we're just like, oh, destined for like that sort of like mid-table. Are we going to become a Preston where we finish 12th every season? Um, yeah, and then kind of yeah, the last 12 months happened. I mean, it's just been a bit of a whirlwind, really. But
Who's had the greatest responsibility in the success of the last season, would you say? Is it the manager?
yeah, I would say so, because I think it's easy to look past the sort of how difficult the job is. I think when he comes in, unknown bloke from France, managed at Lorient, got them promoted, then got them like I think they finished like sixth or something, and then or fifth or sixth, and then relegated the next year and sacked. And that's all there is on him. But he's a young French coach who's kind of a bit of an unknown, and there is that sort of hope that is he going to be the one? And he was always calm. There's a brilliant quote he said. I've wrote it down, and he said, "We won't play like Guardiola or De Zerbi because we're Sunderland and I'm Regis Labrie." And it's just like that's coming and saying that in like your first interview, and like just kind of being so calm all season. What will note people will notice, and especially in the post match interviews, you won't know whether we've won or lost because he'll react in the same manner no matter what.
That can have pros. I think when it's going well, less so if it's going
Yeah,
badly. We speak
yeah,
about people wanting like a bit of passion out of someone like Graham Potter sometimes to
yeah,
show
and
something to the fans, and it's
yeah,
largely been successful for you, obviously, under his tenure.
yeah, and I think especially with the way the season went, where we knew that we were going to be top six after a certain amount of games, we knew we'd kind of guaranteed fourth at a certain point. And we were like, well, we're just going to play this. We're going to play football games kind of for the sake of it now. So just make sure everyone's fit and we don't get any injuries. And we were like losing like random games. And you're thinking we were battering these teams a couple of months ago. What's going on? And going into the playoffs with no form. I remember I went so obviously because Bristol's where I live, but I went to the Bristol City game. And I snuck in with into the sort of like the VIP seated area, and I was sat next to like near like Chris Iwelumo, and he was sat in front of me, and he's chatting to this player. He's going, "Oh well, I thought I thought Sunderland were better than this." He goes, oh, "I don't know what's going on," and then Mayenda scores. It's worth a watch. He picks the ball up on the edge of the D on our own penalty box, drives past every single player in Bristol City's team, and then scores. And then everyone kind of just you just see all the kind of people that are like in the neutral area just kind of like clapping and going, oh, that kid might be quite good, And that was like it was nice to see that players, especially like Meander, who a lot of people probably be thinking, oh yeah, I'll get him in my fantasy team if he's cheap. He last year he was on loan at like, or like the season before he was on loan at like Hibs, not doing much, not pulling up any trees, thinking we're going to have to get a few strikers in because we can't be relying on if Wilson Isidore gets injured, we can't be relying on Meander, and then he ends up what being one of the best strikers in the championship last season. I mean, it was
And
unbelievable, really,
he scored
and
the
that's why I
equaliser in
think,
the playoff final, didn't he?
yeah, yeah, he
Yeah.
did. And you think, and he scored in the first leg against Coventry as well when he
Yeah.
rounded the keeper. Obviously, a bit lucky with the pass back, but
Great through ball from a Coventry player. Yeah.
yeah. But I think that's why I would say that, like, especially with the young players, you need to have a good coach. And the head coach coming in, Regis Labrie, I think without him, we wouldn't have been anywhere near it. If we'd have gone back to a Tony Mowbray or gone for, we could have had another Mick Bill, and then you're screwed. But we've
I
got the right bloke in.
I don't want to drag the tone of this down, but I
Right.
watched both legs against Coventry,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I thought you were pretty piss poor in the second leg.
Yeah. But we don't know.
And I know you
That's
were winning for
because,
most of it, but
yeah.
you were
But
sitting on that way too much, mate.
yeah, it was a bit of a risk. But that 4-4-2 that we played, we haven't played that all season. We usually played a 4-3-3,
So
and we
why did
have
you play
played.
it that night?
I think, well, he played it in both games, the 4-4-2, and I think we're very quick on the counter, and that's one thing that we've, especially this season, with like Wilson Isidore, Mundle, he's like they're lightning. So and Mienda as well. He's a quick boy as well. So I think he just thought sit deep, hit him on the counter. We had Lafay and Job and Daniel who could pick a pass out. I think that was just the game plan. And obviously, it is pure luck that we've scored a 122nd minute winner with a header against Coventry, and then obviously scoring from 30 yards out, finding the bottom corner with someone that's off to Brighton in the summer. I mean, it there is luck, and I think there's luck in all football, but it was
And I have to say as
we
well,
don't normally look that bad. That's what I was thinking.
When Mienda equalised, and I don't know if you felt differently as a fan, but when Mienda equalised in the final, I couldn't see it coming, mate. I didn't
No,
think that you were going to turn it round, did you?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that the subs made a difference. Bringing on Roberts, who was playing with a torn hamstring through the two playoff games, and the majority of the time he was, well, obviously the whole time he was on the final. But no, I just think, especially when it was 2-0 and went to VAR and back to 1-0. I when that second went in and obviously chalked off, I thought, there, that's it. There's no way. Sheffield United haven't. They're not any mugs. They're not going to throw away 2-0 lead at Wembley. But yeah, VAR came to the rescue. I don't think I'll be saying that much this season, but
Yeah, you'll soon be moaning about it, I should imagine,
I
mate.
know.
But
Yeah,
look, massive congratulations on doing it. Have you afforded yourself time to think about next season yet, or are you still just reveling in the celebration of achieving the promotion?
yeah. I mean, yeah. I think it's kind of sinking in now on what we've actually achieved, and I'm already thinking like, when's the fixtures out? I have to plan when I can get up to the stadium, like which away games I can do, all that sort of stuff. And obviously now we've got the sort of being involved in the correspondence as well, working out like, oh, if you're at that game, right, I'll try and get to that one then as well, and then meet up with a load of people, because I think that's the one good thing obviously with FPL as well. A lot of majority of people do support bigger clubs, so it's a good chance kind of me to get around and say hello to people that I've kind of known for years. But yeah, it's gonna be nuts next season. I just can't wait for it really now.
Well, I'll tell you what I can tell you, Spencer, is you are a big club, mate.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah,
It's
I know.
certainly a club with plenty of potential. The stadium is massive. You'll get 40,000 plus in there
Yeah.
regularly next season. I don't particularly doubt that. You know what
No.
people will say, don't you? Are they going to stay up? It's the regular question now, which isn't helped by what's happened to the previous six teams who've got promoted.
But it
What
hasn't.
does
But
what does the club need to do this summer to give yourselves a strong chance of staying up?
we need to spend. Definitely need to spend. But we need to spend wisely and not spend like Ipswich last season, that who, in my opinion, just spent and bought the best championship players. So this season, Ipswich, I can't see them not bouncing back up Ipswich with the players if they keep them. Their
Yeah,
front,
they were
their
future proofing, weren't they?
Yeah, and Southampton, and maybe Burnley as well. We can't play like that. We can't have a sort of possession based style of football and just play like that forever and then just get ultimately get relegated. We've got to have a sort of fluid style, but we've got to invest. And I think obviously at some point today, Bellingham is going to be announced by Dortmund, so that's another 30 million.
Is
In
that a blow or is it a good deal?
It's both. It's a brilliant deal. It's for all parties. I mean, Dortmund are getting a brilliant young player, and I know everyone's going to go, "Oh, it's just you wouldn't go for that much money if it weren't Bellingham." But he is brilliant. He is a top player. He's very similar to his brother, um, and I think that they're kind of getting a bit of a steal, as well as Sunderland getting a bit more than they should really. And I think we've not been pushed about by Dortmund. We've kind of pushed back and said, no, we want this amount of money. And they've come to agreement because they wanted him before the Club World Cup. But it's brilliant for him as well. And you think we could have been, when I think I tweeted and I said, when he first signed, if you'd have said that he was joining Dortmund when Sunderland get promoted, and you go, well, actually, I would take that because that means Sunderland are back in the Premier League, and he's done his job and getting a move to a big club. We're getting money for it. It works out for everyone. I mean, it also shows if you're a young kiddie that's coming through and you think, oh, should I go to Sunderland? And you think, well, look at Bellingham, look at Jack
Yeah, as a
Clark, look at those
pathway.
players. Yeah, there's that pathway that we've now got that a lot of players are going to go, oh, well, they might use this as a bit of a stepping stone, but that's fine. Look at Brighton. They've done it, and that's what we've got to be like.
I'll be honest with you, Spence, if that's how you used a little bit in the next sort of 4 or 5 years or so, you have to take it
Yeah, exactly.
because
And yeah,
it's been away for too long. What areas of the team would need strengthening most? Is it now the central midfield area with Job going?
yeah, we definitely need I'd say another central midfielder. It depends in terms of, I would say, if we sign, so we had Chris Mepham on loan last season, and he's gone. It looks like they've renewed his contract for an extra year, so they paid about 12 million for him back in the day from Chelsea. So they'll want something like 7 or 8 million, I'd assume at least, if we wanted him. So I reckon we're going to have to look elsewhere in terms of central defenders. But we definitely need a couple of them. We needed left back cover and right back cover for about 3 seasons now. So I'm hoping we get one of them. And I'd probably say a right winger as well. I know Patrick Roberts is he's top player, but there's no competition for him, and he does. I hate to say it because obviously now they're all legends, but he's not at the best of seasons. And you think if he'd have had someone right on the right wing, I know Tommy Watson was there for a bit as well. We're losing him to Brighton, um, but when he was fit, we we seemed to Patrick Roberts seemed to play better, and then as soon as he was kind of announced he was going, Roberts kind of fell off a bit. So I'd say a right winger. It just and I think all across the board, like our
It's a
team is
whole
not
bloody
going up for
team,
some reason.
Spencer, isn't it? Come on.
Yeah, I've kind of named the whole team, but yeah, I'd say the only position that I wouldn't be like, oh, it's the end of the world. Is goalkeeper. I'd say Patterson is decent. I wouldn't say he's Premier League level, but he's young.
We
We,
looked at him in
we
January when we had
yeah,
problems in goal.
team, yeah, teams are looking at him, and we've got Simon Moore as backup, who was at Coventry, and he's a bit older, but he's reliable. He's a reliable backup, and goalkeepers aren't the most expensive in the world. You can get a cheap
I
one.
think the concern I'd have and why it's such an important summer is with Bellingham going, it's a little bit like with sort of Dewsbury Hall leaving Leicester last year,
Yeah,
and also Burnley and Sheffield United the year before. If
yeah,
you
Sunday.
do
Yeah,
start in game week 1 and your team is weaker than the team that just got promoted, you've got no chance. So you've got to spend
yeah.
appropriately and properly. But also, I think Sunderland fans will be astute enough to know no one wants to risk the future of the football club by getting it wrong.
No,
And
I
you
think
have
we.
jumped
Yeah,
quite quickly back to this level
yeah. I
now from
think
League One.
yeah. If you look at like a Brighton, where it's kind of they had 8 years where it took them to get from League One to Premier League. We've done it in four, maybe four, 3, 4, and we're a lot further ahead than we should be in terms of the model. And I think people, if you look through Sunderland sort of media, a lot of people will mention, well, the model is working, and this is how the model works. And now we've got to accept that if players are worth 30 million, and the team comes in from a bigger club, like big clubs like Dortmund or teams like that, or Spurs, for example, if they came in for Patson, you can't turn around and say, oh, we're not selling, because that's not how it works now. We've got to sell our players when they're worth that much money. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to see how we get on. I'm not. There's no real expectations from me. I really hope we stay up, but I just it's difficult, isn't it?
You, Leeds, Burnley, be thinking the same thing. Leeds is a monster-sized football club as well. Burnley's got the experience of the yo-yoing, and may even be the best positioned, maybe. Most people aren't going to give you a chance, mate. You already know that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Doesn't
I
mean
would.
you haven't got one.
I would. Yeah, and I know Leeds, obviously, big, massive club, great fan base. Is Daniel Farke going to keep him up? And then is Scott Parker going to keep Burnley up?
Is
Because
Regis
we,
going to keep
we've
you up?
well, we've seen this. The only thing I would say, we've seen those two in the Premier League before. We haven't seen Regis have a go. He could be. He could be. He could be onto something, but we won't know until that first whistle goes. So yeah, and obviously we'll see what our team's like at that point. But we've got a few. I think the preseason games were announced for the end of July, so we're playing against Betis, Sporting Lisbon, a few others as well. A few like northeast teams as well, like Gateshead. I think there's another as well. I think it might be Darlington.
So you're not
So we'll see what.
traveling, you're not straight to Asia or USA yet. No, that's
No,
next
no.
summer, is it?
Yeah, no. My dad was. Me and my dad normally do go. We went last year, funnily enough, to the ones. It was so they advertised it as like just outside of Benidorm, and it was like in the middle of nowhere. And it was like, luckily we didn't get a bus. We drove down ourselves, but yeah, it was a
Wasn't
bit
this a
of a
game that
shambles.
nearly got postponed or something? Am I remembering
Yeah,
this correctly? Yeah.
yeah. So basically, there was. It's like in the mid, and this is a bit random now, but it was in the middle of nowhere in Spain. Like there was like a couple of shops, but they had this massive state of the art football pitch. So we turned up, me and my dad, and we were like, right, we'll go and have a look and see what's going on. And we've turned up and there's a game on already, and it was like Derby versus Stockport. And I was like, oh right. I was like, oh, can we go in and just like I didn't know if it was like free admission. It was like no, it was like 20 quid or something like. Oh, we won't bother them. We'll go down the pub. So we went over to this bar, got a few drinks, and then we turned around and there's a load of Nottingham Forest fans. And obviously, Nottingham Forest and Derby aren't the
Mm.
best of friends. So we're thinking, oh, what's going to go on here? It's all going to all going to kick off, and then um, we were just chatting to the Nottingham Forest fans. And they're like, "Oh, Derby are playing, are they?" And they didn't realise. And obviously, we're walking over to the stadium. Derby fans are walking out, and Forest fans are walking in. And I was just like, just keep my head down. Like, obviously, we're the neutrals here at Sunderland. I was thinking they might just team up and take us on because we're northeast. But yeah, just absolute shambles. So I think there's a few teams that are playing there this year as well. That are just if you, I can't remember what the place is called, but it's not worth staying. Get in and get out.
Noted. I won't be traveling to Hong Kong to watch Tottenham either. Spencer,
And
thank you very much.
yeah,
Absolutely brilliant Planet FPL debut, mate. Really good pleasure speaking to you and getting to know what's been happening with the Mackems
yeah,
over the last 10 years or so. Are we right to call you Mackems or would you prefer Black
yeah.
Cats? What's
Uh, Black Cats, Mackems. Black Cats is a bit of like a newer thing, isn't it? Mackems is good. I would say,
okay?
yeah,
You'll be rejoining us for Correspondent Week. That's scheduled for August the 4th, and we're getting into far more detail on your
yeah,
players, personnel, and the fantasy assets there, mate. Enjoy it next Wednesday when them fixtures drop, mate, because then it gets really
yeah.
exciting. Anything you want to plug before we finish, mate?
No, I guess just if you aren't following me already, just follow me if you need any sort of Sunderland news. I'm sure I'll be tweeting out throughout the season, anything that's going on and sort of transfers and that sort of stuff. I'll just keep people posted if they want to. But yeah,
FPL Beery, is that because you like a drink?
yeah, it is. Well, I'm only on the Audi version of the San Pellegrinos, but
Nice.
I did have a message from someone earlier saying, "Are you going to be having a few beers?" And I was like, "Probably shouldn't. It is a Monday, and I had a bit of a heavy weekend as well, so I need a bit of a reset before we go again."
You'll be all right, buddy. Spencer, thank you so much,
Cheers,
mate.
James.
Look forward to seeing you on Correspondent Week. Sid will be back with me tomorrow, guys. I'm going to look at the done deals in the pre-summer transfer window that have been completed ahead of the Club World Cup. Which leaves me to say, Spencer, congratulations again. Good luck for the summer, mate. Cue music, please, man child.